Hey YouTubers, so I've just finished making this. It is a wooden mechanical mod, all homemade, apart from this bit, which I just unscrew. It's supposed to fit my RDA, but I couldn't find it, so this will just have to be as it is. It's really simple to make. It's very time consuming to make, but it's very simple to make. So it's got a heatsink adapter, because, you know, it's always good to have them. And it's got a solid brass switch, which works on a magnet, as you can hear. It's pretty cool. There's no screws in it yet, so it's very simple. Pops up on the top, and there's the top here. You can see where I've soldered it in place. Behind me are the tools you'll need. You'll need some brass plate. I'm using hardwood 6mm MDF. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And that's mainly because I like the pattern that comes out in it. And as you can see, it's pretty shiny. Inside, so far, this is just as it goes, is my battery. Then I've got a floating spring, that's just for sizing. A bit of brass tube, which happens to go over the top of my 18650 battery, as you can see. And then this bit pulls off. And inside is just all been glued together nicely. And the bottom bit as well, which has all been handmade from plate. Well, it's scrap, so it's not perfect, but it will do. And then on the inside, as you can see here, it's got a floating brass switch. I haven't done the tube completely yet, so I can actually pull out the piece of tube. And inside, my groove is, you can see there's a N52 neodymium magnet, and in this bit is also an N52 neodymium magnet, which has been filed in to the brass plate, which has been soldered and drilled. And these are the basic parts, funny enough. They're all pretty simple. You can make pretty much everything yourself, just with a bit of time, well, a lot of time, a lot of sanding. And I use nothing but a junior hacksaw and some files and some sandpaper, 2 clamps, and instead of using a soldering iron, I used one of these. It's just a cheap gas blowtorch that has a soldering iron capability, but I used the torch for this since I was working on metal plate. This is nothing special, it's just lead-free solder. Not silver solder, lead-free, mainly because that's what I had. And lots of flux, which came in a liquid form this time. So, yeah, that's my e-cig thing, so I'll put it back together. We can see how it vapes. So, the great thing about the magnet is even without the thing in, it stays in place, which is always pretty handy. It's pretty strong. So the pin goes through, he says. Right, so the pin is through. And that's how it goes. So then I just attach the bottom on, and it's compression fitting. That's how it all fits together and stays. It's a little bit tight fitting, but that's the whole point of it. There we go. And my battery's rolled off, as usual. So first I pop in the tube. Fits like so. Then the spring, which I haven't attached. I don't know if I'm going to yet. Not entirely sure. I'll see how I feel. That usually slides in. Typically it's on camera, so it doesn't. So that just pops in. Go on, get in. There we go. Spring is in. And then goes the battery, like so. And then the top cap. The heatsink adapters that I've got a screw in them. So I've undone the screw, so when the atomizer is screwed in, it pushes this out the bottom. That's what makes contact with the top bit. And then that just pops in like so, all nicey nice. And it's back together. I'll get my atomizer and we'll see how she vapes. Yeah, atomizer's right in front of me. So, not the one I was after, but it works. Not pretty, because I wanted my RDA, but it looks pretty cool. So push it down, hit the switch. So it's pretty cool, as you can see, relatively easy to make, just time consuming, and here's the video on how I made this. So cheers guys! Right, so I've cut myself 6 pieces. I'm just doing the last one now. I'm giving them a sand around the edges. As you can see, this is nice and smooth and it's uniform, same pretty much everywhere. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. And this is the one before sanding. You can see it's rough. It's got little burrs on it. So I thought I'd just show you me doing the last one, which is just with a little bit of paper sitting on the floor on a rug. Funny enough, it's my nice clean rug, and you just move it into so you can see the camera, and just sort of taking off the burrs. Just the worst of it. It's the first rough sanding. Mainly because when you glue this, it's going to, oh, there's a big one. When you glue it, it's going to fill in the gaps, but it's also going to make it a little bit more difficult to get a good finish on it. Oh yeah, using the arse of the sandpaper. I know I could just use new stuff, but that's not the point. Nice new, and then just sand the flat face. You could use a file, or you could use a belt sander, or whatever, but the whole idea is this is supposed to be relatively simple, just time consuming. Then just do the other side. So this is basically the first half, right here. I've got my pattern, which is here, which I'll just keep to the side, and I'll mark it with a marker, so if I choose I can make some more, or I can elaborate on the same thing. So we've got our pieces like so, stack them all together, and they're roughly the same size. I use this piece of brass just to roughly show it. It doesn't have to be perfect yet, mainly because I can sand it back. And the idea, which I came up with, is that, put that flat way down, is that this is going to fit in there to make the tube, which I'm going to cut down a bit to make a mechanical switch, since the only bit I've actually bought as a whole is this. So, and the idea is that I'm just going to push it in and get a nice sort of halfway point, you know, approximately, so this will be a nice smooth fit inside the bore. And then this side, it all sticks out like so, but I can cut it and make it all nice and pretty. That's the idea. So what I'm going to do now is do another 6 for the other side, but instead of using this light green, as you can see here, it's all relatively light, I thought I'd mix things up, and I've got this section, which you can't see because the bloody light very well, but you can clearly see there's light, dark and light, so I thought that would be pretty cool to mix it up. So I may come up with a rotational something through it. I haven't decided yet. See how it takes me when I get there. So I'm going to cut 6 more, clean them up, and then I'll be back. So my super simple jig, just thought I'd show this too, is basically a tap and die box, which I keep my tap and dies in, funny enough, which I may use, I may not, it really depends on how it goes. And I just line up the edge, and then I've got this, there are lines in here to hold this roughly straight, just roughly, because it's all going to be sanded anyway, and then I take my hacksaw and lightly give it a cut. Like so. So, with MDF you do have to worry about all the other crap they put in it, as well as chipboard. I've got an ozone generator running and the window's open, so it should be pretty cool. Most of the stuff drops straight out the air, I can't see any dust, so let's get on with this, and then just let the blade do the work, just if you didn't know. Even though this is an old blade, it will still do. Ooh. Getting towards the bottom. And there we go. So it's just to show that you can do this in your home with very basic tools. So I've got another 5 of these to cut, so I'm going to carry on. Right, so I've done my 2 blocks, as you can see, and I was looking at the grains. You see, pretty. Some white. No, these are the hands mixed up. These are the dark. These are the light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a light and a dark, a light and a dark, and a light and a dark. So once this is all finished, hopefully you'll be able to see the sandwich of grain. So it should look pretty cool on the sides once it's done. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. And I've got this is my sort of battery holder that's going to go in, like so. And if I move this to roughly halfway, which fits rather lovely, you can see it's starting to take shape. Halfway anyway. So my next little thing is that I'm going to be putting in a switch. So I've got some magnets so I don't have to use springs. And I'm actually making the switch out of brass plate, which would be pretty interesting. That's why I've got this. And came to a bit of a thingy point, so just like when anyone else does, I grabbed myself a piece of paper and my pattern, which I've now put on there as a pattern. So I was just trying to work out how the switch is going to go. I've got myself, because this is pretty thick plate to be fair, I mean, for what it is, so I can stack it up and solder it together. So I've drawn out my pattern on a piece of paper, and then basically I was just coming up with a way how to put in the rocker switch, which you didn't know, but I am, instead of using, just an ordinary switchy thing for, usual mod box. Whoa. Anyway, so what I came up with was just something simple, since I'm doing a platey thing. Yeah, slashed myself on my straight razor. Zinky. Anyway, so what I plan on doing, if this works, is taking 2 of the middle bits, since there's 6, so I need 2 bits out the middle, and cutting in an angle like so. So the idea is that even though there's an angle, which I'm going to use with this, even though there's an angle which will be cut into this, I'll have these bits on the side here, which will give me access to the switch, which I'm going to put in and it will rock back and forth using magnets, so there's no springs, la-di-da, all cool, and I can stick a pin through, which I haven't made yet, but I will, from something. Probably some of this, which is brass tubing. I have tons of this about for my other little things I do. So I suppose I'm going to cut some out and then see what goes on, and we'll see how that works. So I did my pattern on paper and kind of worked out that I need something like this to get roughly where I want. And I've drawn it out on paper using my original pattern, so it all roughly stays the same. And I've taken out the 2 middle bits, so 1 dark and 1 light. And basically, I've already done this one. What I've done is I drew the line slightly bigger than I need it. So I can just put a line there, and then one at the top there. And then I can join the lines together. So using my lovely and trusty thing. Just mark it there, and then I can just draw that line in. And as you can see, it actually lines up with that one there. So I get a nice guide cut. So I'm going to do the same with the one I've already marked out. And there, and then just move the angle since this is a straight cut. And we've got 2 lines that line up, funny enough. So when I cut these out, these should work pretty damn well at keeping everything together. So now I'm going to hacksaw these out, just using the hacksaw and something to space it on, which will be my box of doom. I'll be back. So I've now finished cutting up my little jiggy bits. I've given them a rough polish, and this is what it looks like so far. As you can see, it's got the internal bits there, and I'm using my bit of brass pipe, which happens to fit an 18650 perfectly, pretty much, into there as my halfway jig. So as you can see, there'll be a piece of brass, which I haven't done yet, and I'm still sort of figuring out how to do it. I'm going to have a floating bit in here, with a pin maybe, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, and something like this bit of wood here, which I haven't shaped yet, and it's going to go in, and it's going to make contact, like so, and that's going to be my on-off switch. So I suppose I should start measuring out a bit of brass. I'm going to be using a nice thick piece of brass. It's just under 2 mil. So I'm going to cut a strip. Well, I'm going to work on this piece of wood, I think, and come up with some type of idea of how I'm going to put it in. So we shall see. So I eventually came to the idea of this. Very simple in the end, but it took a while. I tried a circular one, like so. I tried another one, but I like this shape, mainly because I like it. So, tough. And the idea is that this is going to fit in, a brass version of this is going to fit in, and then it can rock. Let's put it in directly, and it can rock back and forward, and I like the look of it through the top. You know, something nice, simple. I think it looks good. So, quickly mocked up these things together, as you can see, and it fits the brass in there. It says, this is just roughly put together, and then you'll have the switch, a shiny switch coming out the top there. I'll try and get this in the camera. So, it will be a bit different. It will look pretty weird. Yeah, it'll look pretty awesome when it's done. Plus I can do all sorts. So, cut myself a little slither of brass. This is about 2 mil thick. And I can fit 2 of these on here, so I can double it up. So it'll be twice the thickness, funny enough. Then I can solder them together. So, pretty cool. And then we'll see how that looks in here, and I may have to do another 2. But, you know, it's all going on the looks of it. So, let's get busy. So, I've done my, as you can see, my outline here. It's pretty damn close. I can file a little bit off, but it's there. So, I'm going to try and join these 2 bits together by some flux, obviously. Just to give this a go, just to clean it. Right, and where's my blue torch? Let's see if this sticks together.
No, not yet. Oh, been a while since I've soldered brass. And a bit you can't see, there is my solder joint. First of it anyway, and it's actually gone down, cracked and everything, so that's pretty cool. So just another couple of points to solder in on this and we can get more on, I suppose. So, it's cooled down now, and as you can see it looks lovely, right? But it does look like it's passed all the way through. So now what I'm going to do is try to make this look pretty. I mean, it's done, and once it's filed and sanded back it should look good. We'll see if it comes up with the pattern. So, onwards and sandwards. So gluing is going to be a straightforward step. I'm going to take my Gorilla Glue and just take my wood and squeeze out a bead on it if it wants to come out. There we go. And I'm just giving it a good coating because it can all squeeze out later on. And one from this side. The more glue I put on, the better the seal is going to be for when I sand it. So, a bit of a pain, it will do. And just keep going. And the reason I'm applying it on both sides is so I get a good seal, and plus this is going to slide and slip all over the place, so might as well use it for something useful. Which will be lining the bloody thing up. So that's pretty cool. So there's that side done. Flip sheet over. Ooh, yummy. Lots of glue, but you know, sometimes more is more, right? Alright, stick the darkie, and then last but not least, this one. Put more on that side. And it's light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Pretty cool. First things first, push this all into place, roughly. And I'm just moving the glue around. Don't mind if it sticks to the bottom because it's going to be sanded and everything, so I'm lining this up. Let's put the whole lot in glue. I do believe everywhere is absolutely caked in glue. Lovely. There. Nice. Anyway, so I'm going to take upside down, just to aid in the cleanup later on, and then I can slide this round and back to approximate halfway. I can do a bit of fine tuning, and then I'm going to take my clamp and clamp it in place. And I got my clamp somewhere. Ah, here it is. Usually you would protect the piece, but considering what I'm doing with it, move this file that way. Come on, so close. Pretty nicely, and then once you're upside down, take a look. We'll play with between feet. There. And then we're going to add in the other clamp. Fine. Have to move that a little bit. There we go. Not perfect, but it will hold in place. It's all pretty much held to as I like it on both sides. And now I've just got to let this bloody thing dry. So I can just smooth out the glue. Makes it easier for filing later. About the same size on both sides. Should be pretty good. So now it's just a case of leaving this to dry. Cool. So I've got my side glued up like so. It's a bit of a tight fit, but I can always sand it out a bit later on. So I've got my thing that fits in. Just push it in place. There we go. Make that nice and even. Ah, yeah. Use the right side. Like so. Right, so our pieces are now dry. And as you can see, lovely, lovely. Looking very angular and square. We've done our switch now, which looks pretty cool. You can see the black and silver going through it. A little bit of knobbly bits, but never mind, it's not perfect. But these bits, very nice. Along with all the fronts and the backs, that looks pretty cool. And considering it's made out of plate, you do get a nice contrast. Right. Two bits that go together, like so. And now what we're going to do is start shaping this wood before we start doing anything else. So, I'll just chuck this in there like so. Put that in the top, just roughly, so you can see how it's kind of going to look so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut around here to make this more handheld. So first I'm going to cut off this bit and see how it looks, and then I'm going to cut into this a bit more So I've got a nice uniform size. So I'm going to start cutting. So after a lot of sanding, I've got my rough shape. As you can see, it's kind of oval in looking. And you can see how the grain here is starting to go around the sides. And that's just going to be sanded round and round, and obviously so a bit more fine tuning to fit this one. So it's getting smaller. So it looks pretty cool now. So I suppose I should start working on the other side so I can get it all into some type of uniform. And then I can work out the look. So it should be pretty cool. So let's get on. So after even more sanding, the amount of sandpaper just is astronomical. But I used my little tube here to hollow it out so I can actually slide it through. It's pretty cool. So, finished up pretty much the body of it now. And as you can see, it's been sanded back and it looks, yeah. So, just because I could, I got a bit of teak oil, otherwise known as linseed oil. And you can see the colour difference between that one and this one. And the only difference is the oil. So it looks pretty cool. I mean, it will look awesome, I'm hoping, when it's done. But you can see all the colours coming out on the side that's been oiled, and this side hasn't been yet. So I get to fiddle around. I'll probably take a bit more of this little red stuff off on this side. But yeah, that's just, sorting out, making it nice. So I think it looks pretty good so far. So, yeah. Nice. So, I've sanded it down. A lot of sanding and a lot of messing around later. I got my tube and wrapped it in a little bit of sandpaper. I'll move it that way. And, now it slides in and out pretty well on both sides. So, now I've got my shape, as you can see. Very pretty, very nice. Lots of contours and whatnot. So, I'm going to be starting with one of my plates. I'm going to start with the top plate, since that's going to be the most difficult to put in. So what I've done here is I've just turned it over, stuck it on, so I can draw it out later, but now it's just cutting out these squares. So I've literally just done that and marked it using my needle file in a file. So I'm going to cut this out now. Fun. One more to go. Right, so I finally filed these down to something that looks remotely like a top. And funny enough, I did the bottom one as well, so I got a bottom. It's not exact, but then again, I'm using a junior hacksaw and a little file. So it takes forever, but you do get, it does look pretty cool. So before I start drilling the top and making the mechanism work, I'm just been cutting off these little strips, and they're going to, funny enough, I'll get it the right way around, it's going to go around there, and I'm going to have another one for the bottom. So, and all this hasn't been measured, it's all sort of by eye and how I like it, so I can file it and change it, so it's completely original. I'll never be able to redo this by hand, so it's pretty cool. So I've literally just marked off my other one, just with, funny enough, a file, since it's beautifully and hard, it's good as a scribe. This is a triangular one with a point. And I've got a line here, and now I'm going to cut this out using a hacksaw. So yeah, more things. I've just got this clipped on, funny enough, my tap and die set with a couple of clamps lightly put in. This plate is 1mm, so it's half the size of the other stuff. That's why it's going to be a lot easier to work with. And when you're doing these things, go slow. It's, if you put enough, push it the right way, get it into the line, just push forward so you get like your little marky bit, and then you just let the saw do the work. I mean, it's going to take forever, but you do get relatively a very, very straight cut. Notice how I'm holding it. I'm not really putting any pressure on it. I'm just pulling it back and forward, and I'm letting everything do its job. He says, pushing down on it. That's when you start getting burrs and stuff, when you start moving it and the blade wobbles all over the place. So as you can see with this one, it's pretty damn straight, considering it's done by eye. And I got this little bit here because it was slightly too long for my little hacksaw. But then again, I'm using just the most basic hand tools I can find to create this, so pretty much anyone can do it. It just takes a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this one out, and then I've got my two wraparounds for this, and then I'm going to start working. I'm going to start fine-tuning the mechanism once I've opened this up, so I can actually make it work. Wouldn't that be fun? So I'm going to get on with this. Right, so I've got two of these out now. They're pretty, they've got little things on them, but I can flatten them out once I've put them on the plates, which are also not perfect, but the soldering, once I've all put it in, it should even up nicely and fill out the gaps that I've slightly left and fill out the bulges. So you can see where the plate is. Turn around, you got the top and the bottom, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is I've got to do the fine tuning to get the mechanism in place. So it's fairly simple. I've already picked this one, which is going to be my top. So I just sort of roughly put that one there, and put that one there, line it up nicely to where everything is, and then I'm going, just do that, like so. Then I can remove this one off, and I've got, I turn it around, inside here I've got the inner workings of it. I'll just move out the light. So I'm going to take my scribey doofer, or pointy file, needle file, line it up again. I'm going to make the and as you can see, I'll shine it in, there you may be able to see there is a scribed bit right there. So this is roughly where this switch is going to poke through. So now I've got to spend some time thinking about how I'm actually going to make this mechanism work. I know how I want it to work, but as with most things that come into real life, what you have a picture in your head and what you can do in reality, it's two different things. So I know it's going in,
I'm going to have the tube, which is going to do that and move back and forward. So that's pretty easy. So now I've just got to decide how this is all going to fit in and stay put. So more thinking and a bit of cutting, and I'll come up with something fairly simple probably, because that's the idea, but it's going to work awesome. So, as you can see, looks much better now. I've cut off this bit, so I may have to make a new one of these because it's got angry holes, but you never know. I'll see what it looks like when I've done it. And I've cut these to the size of this, so I can bend this down, and it's got the right thickness. So what I'm going to do is unscrew this and move it up to roughly in line. Oh yeah, my lovely wooden bits. So it's roughly in a straight line, and just tighten that up. And then the idea is that I can take my needle pliers, get it roughly where I need it. And then the idea is once I've picked a side, I'm going to bend she down. Hopefully, I can do it cold like this. Yeah. And we've roughly got something that goes down. So I can take this out. And I can adjust this. I don't need to heat treat it. It's not hardcore. So now when I put it in, you can see how it's starting to take shape, which is pretty cool. So I can adjust this angle with a pair of pliers to how I want it. So I'm going to carry on and see what I come up with. So I've got my mechanism, the idea for it down. What I've come up with is I've got these magnets. The little ones here, these little square ones, are N52 magnets, so they're pretty damn strong. So I've filed out a bit here, so I can put it in. Oh, there we go. So there's my thing. You can tell that there's magnetic attraction there from that distance, so it's pretty hardcore. So I put this bit in here, and then I'll have this other magnet, this other square one, put on the brass bit here, so it goes down and holds it together. I've come up with a rough shape of where I want it, so I can glue a magnet straight onto the metal bit here, in the metal bit, and straight behind there. My brass top, which is coming along, so it's all starting to come together. Hey guys, so forgot to press the record button. Clever. Anyway, so as you can see in this half, I have glued a tiny little magnet, and I've drilled a hole here, and I filed in a groove and installed a magnet in here too. So, and funny enough, drilled a hole through. So that now sticks on like so. So you can see where the switch placement is. I'm using attraction instead of repulsion, which is a little different. The hole has been drilled so I can fit, if I can find it, which is right in front of me, this, which is just a hollow tube. It's not really going to do anything apart from just keep it all in place, and it just literally slots through like so, and we've got the switch which moves like you would. This bit's pretty much the same, as you can tell. So we've got our switch and switch. What else have you missed? Ah, yes. These flat bits I have actually soldered on the roundy bits, just using solder on a piece of aluminium, because aluminium, the solder doesn't stick to it. So it's fairly simple. I mean, I just used the blowtorch and the solder, as you can see, to do the edges. Little niggly one here, but this was the first one, so, you know, I can't really complain. And I did the second one as well, which I also forgot to press record. I used the original piece that I cut off just because it was there. And again, it wasn't quite long enough because I'm using offcuts, so I've made a little insert. So when we put this all together, let's hope this works. This bit goes in so, nice tight fit. Put the back in first, why not? And then lovely, lovely. So that fits in. And then we've got the top bit, which I'm still working on. And that fits over the top like so. So far we've got something that looks like this. It doesn't look too bad. So far, I mean, it's not perfect by any means. It's got a little knobbly bit there, and this one goes on the underside. But then again, it's homemade, so it's supposed to have a few little kinks in it. So it looks pretty good so far, I think, like so. So I'm just playing around with the switch and moving it. So the idea is that when the tube goes in, and this goes back on, like so, I've still got to file this little knobbly bit down here, slightly, just for some fine tuning, but you get a nice, and then the other contact's going to be on the back here, once everything's all pretty shiny. So soldering is really simple. You didn't get to see me do it, so I'll show you quickly. Back of a thing, and you want to join two bits of metal like so together, just for the hell of it. I'm just going to do these two. So what you want to do is, obviously you need a heat source, and you can use a stove, or you can even use a soldering iron at a push, but one of these is, a little gas torch is the best thing to use. So you're obviously going to need flux. I'm using liquid flux for soldering. This happens to be for solar panels, but it works rather well. And you just literally paint on the two edges that you want to solder, and then arrange them as you want, as you can see. And once they're joined together, you can get your gas torch, heat it up a bit, then get some solder. You can see it forms a blob on the top, and then you heat up the blob. As you may be able to tell, just move this across. It will follow the heat. So we have a little bit like so. Oh, a little bit too much. And just heat through. And I'll turn this off now. All of that with one hand. It's pretty cool. So this is going to be hot, so I'm just going to move it around a little bit. Oh yeah, it is hot. And then when you turn it over, you can see there is a teeny tiny blob of solder going all the way up the center. And it's pretty hardcore as it is. It's already pretty much cool because the aluminium takes away most of the heat really quick, so you don't get too bad a time, and it is fairly goddamn hard. I mean, you need a pair of pliers there. There. You can pull it apart with a lot of strain, and you can see where the little blob was, and then you can see where the solder's gone to. So I should have turned it over and did the other side, but that's how I did the soldering for this. And it's pretty hardcore. I mean, you saw I had to use a pair of pliers, so it's coming on. So next will be fine-tuning this, and then the back, once I've sorted out this, and then we get to install the atomizer, and then that should be, hopefully, it done. Cool. Right, so been playing around fine-tuning the button so it opens, so it fires when it's
when this is on it, funny enough. And I did that by just filing down the outer edge, which I've rolled, bent down. Just, you know, it looks slightly aesthetically better. The magnet, it does wobble this switch, but it's pretty much a floating switch, so it's never really going to go any lower because it's got the pin. But you can see where it... So what I've got, to make the contact, I'm going to solder on these two little plates that I've cut out. There's the first one, there's the second one. So when we hit the switch, it goes up, which will be pretty cool. There is still a slight gap, but with the solder that I'm going to put on, it's all pretty hardcore. It should be pretty cool. So, when you're going to be soldering to something, you've got to make sure that all the oxide layer is off. So you filing and sanding just to clean it up. And that will give you a good contact when you come to solder everything. So now when we add on the flux the whole area, because I can build it up slightly with a little bit of solder. That's all pretty. And this one's going to be the first one, I've decided. I'm holding it. Let's give that plenty of flux on it. And then just drop it in where I want it to be. Now comes the fun bit, making sure you don't do the solder. If you're worried about your solder being a bit old, you can take a little bit of sandpaper and just give it a rub with the sandpaper, and that cleans up the outside of your solder. So let's see how this goes. Get a nice small flame, he says. So the trick is with this is to apply heat and let the solder do the work. He says. Okay, fine. First raise it a little bit. Another blob. Don't get your hand caught in it. It's not going to play ball now, I'm doing it for the camera, but it does. It really does. Just put it on where I want it. There we go. Of course you are. Flip it round and give it a... The solder will want to move slightly, fine with that. Just to make sure we've got it all. Put a little blow on the top of it. You can tell it sits on a bead on the top, and when you heat it a bit more, it then turns solid. That's pretty cool. Hot solder. So, there's the first one. Very hot. So I'm going to pick it up with this for a minute. And we've still kept the solder joints on the other side, and we've got, yeah, it's almost cool enough now, and now we've got the back bit which has been soldered, which is pretty cool. I'm going to have to turn on some lights, I think.
So, after a lot of fiddling about, I managed to get my little lip thing on here. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but it will do. And now it's time to mark out the hole for the battery. So, what I did is I put the casing together and put the tube in, put some marker pen on here, and then just dropped it down, and it made, funny enough, a hole. Not a hole, a mark. So that's going to be roughly my mark. So I'm just going to... I'm going to use the old trusty needle file, since it's nice and hard on that. Use another file. Shouldn't always use the tools. And make an indent. Roughly in the centre line. Since this is all being done by eye, there's no point using a ruler. You won't be able to see shit on it. And I got my drill, and I got a 6mm bit, which I've sized up approximately with just slightly bigger. And dun dun dun, in goes the drill bit. Oh, wrong way. And now I'm just gonna carefully, instead of using a pilot hole, drill, find my centre hole I popped in. If I can, or I'm going to have to make a bigger one because I can't get to it. So I'll use another drill bit, a smaller one, find the hole which I knocked in, and then make it bigger. And there is my rough hole, which this is slightly too big for. This is slightly too big, so I get to pretty it up, and then I'm going to tap it, I think. Right, so dun dun dun, I've cut these little bits of tubing that I did, and I've tapped a hole in the top here, which now this bit screws in quite snugly. It's firm in there, so it's pretty much ready to go, he says. So I got my tube, as you do, and that just pops in. And I've got this spring. It came from a 18650. It's just for a spacer, to be fair. And then I'm going to need a battery, like so. And as you can see, it's already pretty much at the top. So with these heatsink adapters, if you get yourself a screwdriver, you can undo the copper screw. Obviously we don't want it all the way out, we just want it a bit of the way, and as you can see it's already pretty cool there. So I'm going to go get an atomizer and see how this works.